What's up everybody, we're back with the final game day graphic of the series. This is the coolest one for sure. I made it for Halloween, so without further ado, let's break it down. I used a different floor texture in this graphic, one that just looked a little more creepy and stuff than the usual, and obviously I had to make it black and white because red is not in our color scheme. So then I used a curves layer, again just brought it down a little bit to darken up the outer edges. Used this mask here to just like take it away from the middle and leave the edges to be darker. And then I have a screen orange layer. This is basically the same thing as I did in the video before where I used the hue saturation layer set to colorize and made it orange, but this is just a color fill set to orange. That's set to screen. Again, you can mess with the opacity, mess with the harshness of your brush when you're painting it in, and then you can also do the little double click and drag the slider right here. But for this, we did not do that, so I just used screen, brushed it in, added in the game day text with the gradient overlay. This is just a picture of some sparks set to screen. I found this picture of fire, put a curves layer on it just to brighten it up a little bit. I think I used the same one here that just has a layer mask on it and painted in where I wanted it. What I did was I used this picture of Chase Bryce and just erased his head and neck, and then made the fire look like it was coming up out of his jersey to start on the Ghost Rider look effect. I used a hue saturation layer to tweak his jersey from like a blue tint to more of a yellow tint. Then I used a curves layer and just brought down the exposure a bit on most of his body. And then I used another curves layer. I just painted in where I thought it would be darker based on the light source, which is right here. As you can see, it's just kind of like these places that are away from the light source. I use another orange screen layer. This time I did use the little black slider pull down. Did the same thing here. This one's set to linear dodge add. Again, you can always mess with the settings, but you just don't want to overdo it, which is sometimes hard to do. So I just painted in a more concentrated orange on his chest right there, and then even more concentrated on his like neck with that one. Then I added in this cutout of him on top and just used an inner shadow. So it's set to 0 fills. There's nothing actually there except for the inner shadow. That just gave him an inner light, which is an orange color dodge, just hitting the edges of his jersey where the fire would be. The fire would be sort of lighting things up. His hand and the ball right here also have a little bit of it on there. So I just did that with this layer mask right here. So that's what it looks like all over. And I just painted it in up here. So then I added in the skull. So I added in an inner shadow set to color dodge, an inner glow set to color dodge. One is a little bit more gradient than the other. And then I added in our texture over top just to give it another sort of cool look on the skull. I added in some lighting into the eyeballs because I knew I was gonna have fire coming out of it, and painted in more lighting with the curves layer just bumped up. And then I added one more curves layer just to brighten up the whole skull because I knew it was going to be super close to the light source, because you can see it's really close to the light source, so it would be one of the brightest things. Then I added in another orange screen layer with the slider pulled down to 55%, and that is just brushed onto the skull, and then another orange layer set to color burn brushed onto the skull as well. And then I added in a fire layer kind of like hitting the outside edge of the skull with a curves layer on top of it. So the fire layer is set to lighten. The curves layer is just bringing down the intensity, sort of making it less bright but a little bit more red, but we'll fix that later. And then I did the same thing in both of his eyes just to give it the effect of the fire is like coming out of the skull. And then one more fire layer in the left eye to really brighten that side up. So then I just use this orange layer to paint some glow, some orange glow on his neck right there. That's set to linear dodge add. These are just oval shadows for the people that are going to be standing / floating here, which Corey Sutton will be doing since he is a ghost. So this is a cutout of his jersey set to lighten, and then obviously this is just like a smoke brush layer thing that I put in to make it look like his bottom half was like, you know, just a ghost tail. Then a curves layer brought down to just darken up his jersey a little bit, and then I just tweaked the color from like a blue tint to a yellow tint, and then I used an inverted layer of his face and arms and set that to color dodge, and that's how I got the effect that you see there, which is one of the cooler pieces of this graphic. And then I got another cutout of him, of his arms, so you can see like it's kind of hard to tell like where his arm is, and then this right here is just like nothing. So I got just the shell of his body by using his body and then putting it in a group and then turning the fill to 0 and just using layer style effects to give him a glow on the outside and inside. So that kind of gives him an outline so you can see where he is and it's not like super confusing. And then I added another smoke layer and brightened that up in the outer glow, and then another smoke layer and gave that whole layer a orange glow, even though it's a ghost. So I'm not sure if light would actually hit a ghost like that, but I'm just gonna assume that that's the case. And then we have Cam, and what I did here is added on a sort of skull texture on him, set to linear light, and I just painted it on his face. Then I added in jersey pieces to make it look like his arm, the top of his arm was not there. And then I added in these cuts with inner shadows to make it look like it's like a cut out of his skin actually, and then slashes inside of those with like orange fiery stuff coming out, just using inner and outer glows. So then I put those everywhere, all over his body. And then this is why I sort of removed the top of his arm there. I knew some of it was gonna be hidden by this arm piece, but I kind of made the jersey look like there was like a hole where his arm was hanging out of. And then so all I did to that was I just brightened it up using a curves layer. I used a hue saturation layer just to make it look a little less bland, so I kind of brightened it up, gave it more color. And then I added on a little bit of shading right here, just a black brush because it's coming out of his jersey. Added another slash layer on his zombie arm with the same effects as the other things. And then I put a hole as his eye right there, darkened up his whole body again with just an exposure or just a curves layer brought down. Then I used this picture of tree bark to make his hair look like dirty and gross like zombie hair, so it kind of makes it like green and icky and stuff. I set that to darker color. Then I added in the eyeball dropping out of his face, which you can it's kind of hard to tell, but that's why I didn't pay much attention to the details of it. So I just darkened that up, made it orange instead of green, and then just gave it a little bit of a glow to hopefully make it stand out a bit. Then I put an inner shadow on his whole body. On this right side, it's just an orange glow, or I mean left side, just an orange glow. And then I just darkened up his right side using a black brush because that was the side that's facing away from the dark. And then I painted on a little more orange glow using linear light. It's at 90%, just a orange layer. And then we have Bear Hunter, who is the Pumpkin King guy, and so I painted on some shading on him, used a curves layer again, brought down to make him a little bit darker, and then I added in some orange glow, and then I added in this picture of a pumpkin and just brightened that up, added on an orange glow to that using linear dodge add, and then sort of just shaded in the bottom a little more to make it look more connected to his body. So now I found this picture of a tree limb and I made it look like his arm, like it was sort of grabbing the ball that's on the ground. Then I just darkened up the sides of it and the part under the jersey using black brushes. And then I found another one and did the same thing, just darkened that up using black brushes to connect it to the floor a little bit better, make it look a little more realistic. Then I used a curves layer on all that to darken it up, and then a orange glow layer again with the slider pulled down. As you can see, that's what it would normally look like, and it's at the linear dodge add. So to take some of that effect away, you just bring that black slider down. Then I added in a rim light with this inner shadow right here, just an orange light, probably set to color dodge or screen. And then I added in some more orange on top, linear burn set to 71%, and then we added in some more spark layers up top to really emphasize the skull and the fire up here, and then another spark layer on Cam's waist and arm sort of, and then another just glow layer, which is an orange layer set to screen with that same effect, the black sliders pulled down. So I just kind of brushed that all over the bright orange areas, and then I just tweaked some of the blue coloring with this layer, and then added in the info, the lighting, our LUT that we put on everything, and the bottom info. So that's it for this graphic and the game day series. Let me know what sort of topics you want me to cover in future videos in the comments.